The trial episode of Interview with the Vampire, one of the heaviest episodes of the entire series, one of my favorite episodes of TV of all time. It's so well executed, acted, everything is perfect. It's pretty traumatic, it's pretty intense, so I can't wait to go through it all with you. We can all rely on each other for emotional support. So before we go into the details of this episode, please do those things that help me out here on YouTube. Make sure you like, you share, you subscribe, you leave your comments. I love having discussion with you all. You hype up the video, you put the notification bell on so you don't miss any of my other uploads. And I'll have tons of uploads in the next 7 weeks or so, because I'm recording this today on Friday, June the 5th. And so The Vampire Lestat's coming out in less than 48 hours, which I'm so elated. And I'll have tons of videos when that comes out. So yeah, do all those things for me. If you are new around here, hello, thank you for joining me here today. You don't know because you just joined here today. I have not read the books. So I don't like spoilers at all. I've never liked spoilers ever. So if you happen to have read the books and you want to leave a comment, please leave one that doesn't include any spoilers, because I just want to see things play out on TV and not in the explanation of things in the books, in the comments. So thank you so much in advance. Let's get on to talking about this harrowing episode of TV. We start off with violence right away. Whenever I rewatch this episode, and I've watched it many, many times, I always kind of skip over this bit because it really kind of bothers me. It's when Louis and Claudia are being tortured in the basement. So we see Louis is in a body bag or a potato sack or whatever, and he is being beaten by the coven members. And it's just so brutal. Claudia is put in the dumpster that has the rats, and she's being attacked by the rats. It's just really, it's so gross. And like, to think the level of disdain these coven members have for these people, it's not warranted at all, not in my opinion. And to know that Armand had an idea of this is how things would play out, I hate him. You'll hear me saying that 1,000 times. I've said it 1,000 times already in all these retrospective review videos. And back in Dubai, I actually didn't pick this up until last night when I rewatched this episode, probably for the 20th time. But Armand is looking at the script they have, and he's kind of studying it, even though he knows it already. But he's looking at all the pages, and now I pick up that he's looking to see that there aren't any red scribbles in the margins. And we see that Daniel picks up on this, and so this will come to play in the finale, as we know. And it's just so gross that they're up there, Madeline, Claudia, and Louis, and everybody loved Claudia for such a long time. Her fans who are in the front row, now they're there just eating up, her death trial, and they're all reading her diaries because Santiago is dispersing it amongst the crowd. It's like, you're doing a trial right now, you're going to be talking a lot. Why do you need to show these people the evidence? It's so gross. We see a big chair come out, and Louis starting to feel ill. He's starting to feel like there's a presence that he doesn't want to be there. And so I remember when I watched the teaser for this, a day or two before the episode came out, we saw the clip of Lestat, wearing his pinstripe suit, and that shot of him walking across one of the backstage areas, I don't know what it's called, but he's walking across kind of a bridge, and we see him throw his jacket down. I'm like, my Lestat, I love you so much. You have so much panache. I love that part. And then he shows up, and Lestat is looking particularly good on this terrible day. And yeah, he just looks really striking. So he's wearing the pinstripe suit, and his hair's all blown out nice. He's walking, Lestat has a good walk. He's walking with all this confidence, and like his face looks good. Like he just looks really, really good. And he's in such stark contrast to the rest of them because Louis is a good looking man, but of course right now he's not looking the best because these animals beat him up. So I think that's very deliberate that they had such a stark contrast. And also it is not lost on me that they have this very attractive blonde-haired, blue-eyed white man who's standing up all dressed up nicely, and he's got his family, the two of them, who are Black members, and they're not looking too well. And this whole situation, as Claudia mentions later on, it's like a stoning. It's like a lynching, really, the way they treat them. It's like the equivalent of a lynching, having Claudia being burnt by the sun, and how they beat up Louis so many different times. So it just kind of plays into that. So, you know, I know a lot of Black commentators have mentioned that too. And it's like, yeah, this was completely deliberate. And, you know, as Armand, who was a brown man himself, you know, he didn't think about his Black boyfriend and what this could mean and what this could trigger in him. It's just, that's why, again, I can't stand Armand. Oh, it's just, he's really, really terrible. Lestat starts his testimony, and he gets into his backstory of being in France, Nikki, being underground for a while, going to New Orleans, and Santiago asks him who he meets there. And so we see him kind of take a break. The music stops because they're so dramatic with all the presentations. The presentation was pretty good, but you know, what they were presenting, what they were doing was awful. But the music stops, and he turns around and he looks at Louis. And I remember when I watched this, I read so much in Louis' face. And I actually saw an interview that Jacob did, like maybe a day later. I saw a day later. And he kind of confirmed what I saw in his facial expression. He had a look of, is this really Lestat? Like real Lestat, not Dream Lestat. Is he really here? Okay, I think he is. Oh my gosh, you're alive. Oh my gosh, remember the last time I saw you, I slit your throat. You're probably mad at me. Oh my goodness, I missed you. And oh my gosh, you look really damn good. And oh yeah, he's here at the trial. He's gonna kill me. It's like all these different emotions in just one look. And that's why we're so lucky to have Sam and Jacob and all of them as the actors on the show, because they do such a great job. And of course, the audience is eating up everything Lestat has to say. He has a huge commanding presence. He's funny. He's making them laugh. They're really eating in the palm of his hands. When Lestat goes into the details of his first encounters with Louis, some things I was like, I don't believe this. He basically made it sound like Louis was stalking him and sexually harassing him, which I find very hard to believe. I think this was written by Santiago or one of them Coven people. This was not Lestat's actual words, because just in context, thinking about it, this white French man shows up in New Orleans, and this Black Creole man is going to be all up on him and being aggressive with him. And Louis, at that point, who was a closeted homosexual, why would he do that? He would not do that. That is complete lies. That is Santiago's. Those are Santiago's words. And he kept on mentioning how Louis kept on reaching out to him, calling to him, asking him to come to him. I was like, you know what? If you're reading Louis' mind and he has impure thoughts about a man in his mind, that's not really fair, because he can't control that, and he doesn't know that you're reading him at that moment. So you can't fault him for that. Once again, Santiago's words. And then Lestat was talking about their friendship and how they eventually got married in the church. And of course, that one jerk in the balcony makes a homophobic comment, and he is very lucky that Lestat just read him for filth, because he could have been, a lot of terrible things could have happened to that man. He goes on about their ups and downs, about Louis' diet and all that kind of stuff. And then he goes on about the night that Louis told him he was going to leave him. And he shows that man the vampire loneliness. And I still kind of wonder is vampire loneliness that bad? Or is it just bad for Lestat because of his personality? Because we've seen plenty of vampires be alone and they've been fine. But for him, I guess maybe it just cuts a bit deeper. But then he goes on to talk about Louis coming back with a girl and how he was so confused because this is complete whiplash. You wanted to leave me, now you wanted to create a family and stay with me. Like, what's going on? And so we talked about Claudia's creation. So if you watch my review of episode 4, I talked a lot about this stuff here in episode 7. So that video was super long. So it goes on to a bit more detail, but I'll just say here that in general, I believe Lestat's story way more than I believe Louis' story. It just makes more sense. I do believe that Louis knew, because Lestat told him about the laws and about not changing teenagers because of their pubescent brains and their body chemistry would be completely awry. But Louis was so desperate for something to make him feel better that he wanted to make this child. And he wanted Lestat to make this child for him. He is so desperate for Louis. He's desperate not to be alone. And he thinks this could solve their problems by creating this vampire, this Band-Aid vampire baby. He does it, but before he does, he lets Louis know that he'll regret this for the rest of his life. And I'd say that's pretty true. And at this point, I think in present day, Louis should recognize that Lestat didn't come there to persecute them. He came there to save them, or at the very least not to let them go down without him, because he broke laws, because he admits that he broke, I think, the second law by creating Claudia. So if they're going to go down for their crimes, he should go down too. And of course, Santiago's like, oh no, you didn't know anything. Oh my goodness, how could you be to blame for anything? And then we see in Dubai, present day, Louis is still envisioning Dreamstot. So Dreamstot's there, he's wearing his trial clothes, makes sense. But I am positive that throughout their time in Dubai or wherever they've lived, he's envisioned Lestat several times since the trial. And this is a nice kind of comforting thing for Louis, because Lestat mentions how they were a happy trio. And they were a happy trio for a while, because I do think, I mentioned this before in particularly my episode 4 and 5 reviews, that I think Claudia kind of paints Lestat in a worse light than he actually was. Like, he wasn't perfect. He wasn't a perfect father by any stretch of the imagination, but I don't think he was as bad as often as she made him out to appear. He talks about Claudia taking off and how that affected their relationship and how things went really badly when she came back home. I also talked about this fight in my review of season 1, episode 5, but I'll just say here that, the fight was obviously, it was very terrible. It ended off very badly. I do believe it could have been stopped earlier, but people were in their feelings too much. And I think Louis, before the drop, obviously, he behaved very badly. And when I was rewatching this last night, I noticed that once they got up the stairs, Lestat is basically the rag doll. Lestat's not throwing Louis at all. It's all Louis, throwing him, bashing his face in the coffin. Like, it's a really bad time. And 2 times at least, Lestat says, I don't want to fight like this. Like, let's stop. And of course, when Louis tells Lestat about his elaborate plans to cut his head off and drag it down the street and put up on a pike in a park or something, that's what really tipped him over the edge. And of course, the sky situation happened, which Lestat realizes now, and he apologized before, but he really apologizes for it now. And I do think, and I mentioned before in other videos, that I think with all this time with Lestat being alone, he had lots of time. As he mentioned, he thought about it while he was in the coffin, in the dump, and years since then. So right now it's 1949, so it's been 9 years. He's thought about how awful he was, and his rage that night, he dropped Louis from the sky to hurt him. He did it deliberately, and it hurt him, and he became broken, and he'll never forgive himself for going that far and for what he did to Louis. And you see Louis, he's kind of inscrutable. Like, he looks like, okay, sure, whatever. But we also hear that he says that at the moment he's thinking about, am I going to be alive in 10 minutes? So he can't really process Lestat's apology, but I do think it was heartfelt. But I was a bit annoyed, and I understand it in this very high-stress situation, so I'm not going to give her too much grief. But Claudia saying, oh, he's lying, his apology, he's lying, and if he is telling the truth, is no good, it's too little, too late. It's like, again, Claudia, let him decide that. You don't control his mind, let him decide that. And then Claudia gets frustrated. She says, well, he can cry and get off scot-free. I'll cry, I'll do a song and dance, and let me go free too. And then she admits to poisoning him, but he's clearly very much alive. But of course, everyone wants to think about Lestat, and she goes on to say, it's always about either one of you, or the two of you guys together. It's never been about me. I've always been a shingle on your roof. It's not about me, which unfortunately is very, very true. And Lestat told Louis that if I make this teenage girl, she'll be a cripple, to use his words. And Claudia says, you never told me that. Is that true? And Louis doesn't really have an answer for her. So once again, it's really terrible setup. Throughout this entire trial, Madeline looks completely catatonic, and we see Santiago whisper in her ear a couple of times. And so I didn't come up with this theory, but I saw other people say, and it makes sense that Santiago was trying to jumble her mind because he knew from the rehearsals, we'll see more in episode 8, but Lestat didn't really want to be there. He didn't want to do this trial. And Lestat can talk to Madeline. He can't talk to Louis or Claudia because he's their maker, but he can talk to Madeline, and Madeline can talk to Claudia at least. You can't talk to Louis. But that's why Santiago jumbled up her brain so no signals from Lestat could go to her. It's just a really traumatic situation. Also, I saw people say, I didn't really see this. I think I saw it more in still pictures, but on the TV show itself, I didn't really notice, but a lot of people said that you can see bruising on Lestat's arm, and where his wrist meets the wrist of his shirt, you can kind of see some bruising. I couldn't really see. It could be just shadows, who knows? But we do know that Lestat is a bit compromised. I'm jumping towards the end a little bit, but we see him at the end. He looks like he's almost wobbling. Like he looks like he's paralyzed, basically, like emotionally and physically paralyzed. So they're really doing a number on all of that. And I forgot to mention too, they cut their Achilles heel, so they can't really walk. And I happen to have learned a lot about Achilles heels in the past year or so, but those are very thick. And when those snap or get severed in this case, it's healing. It's going to take a while, even if you are a vampire. And it's just inordinately cruel. It's just really disgusting for them to cut them to begin with. When it comes to sentencing, we know Madeline chooses to stay with Claudia, even though she could have gone with a coven, but she said, Claudia is my coven. And I remember when I watched this, I cried when I watched this originally. But Claudia, as she mentioned, she's never been anyone's number one her entire life, when she was a human and even as a vampire. So she finally has somebody who puts her first. Unfortunately, they lived together for a couple of months or so. They had a very short union, but at least, especially at the end, she knew that Madeline was always going to be there for her, or there with her. So it was very, very sweet. And then with Claudia sentenced to death, and she looks at the crowd, she makes sure she sees everybody's faces, because she says that in the afterlife, if she comes back in the afterlife, she's going to haunt every single one of the people in that room. And I do believe that includes Louis and Lestat, her parents. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with Claudia or Delaney in season 3 that's happening in a few days. I wonder if they'll show Delaney in the first episode. Who knows? But whatever. It'll happen sometime in either June or July. And we know Louis gets sentenced to banishment, which was Lestat's doing. And because this entire time he's been, warming up to the crowd, coercing them to see things from his side. And so he was able to manipulate them to say banishment and not death. And we see Armand in the corner, his eyes turning that bright orange. They're like, his pupils are shaking back and forth as if to showcase that he's putting in all this effort to save his man, when he did nothing. He didn't lift a single finger. When it comes to the execution, we see that Madeline is taken down pretty quickly. I think maybe because she's a new vampire, she just couldn't withstand the sun that much, so she is dead pretty quickly. And then we see Claudia eventually succumb, even though she was singing the Windows When They Close song. And we see her start to scream. And then Claudia looks off at Lestat. And I always thought this, but I saw them confirm in interviews, Delaney and Sam, that she looked at him like, Dad, like, I'm dying, can you help me? But Lestat wasn't able to do anything for her. And we see Lestat's expression, and his face just looks kind of blank in a way. Like he has a bit of an expression, but not much of one. And we know Lestat, he's a very expressive man. So him with that expression when his daughter is dying in front of him, that's not right. So yes, once again, we saw him wobbling. So I think that they put a spell on him. They did something to prevent him from going out there or doing whatever he could do to stop this sunning from happening to Claudia. And then Armand mentions to Daniel and Louis right there that the last thing that Claudia saw was Lestat. And to say this, and we know this is all his retelling because Louis wasn't there, saying this that's not really a comfort to Louis. I wouldn't think it'd be much of a comfort knowing that Claudia, the last person she saw was her maker, her father, who she hated. That doesn't really help matters. I don't think so. And the idea this entire time, for 70 years or so, however long it's been, Armand has let Louis think that Lestat came there to hurt him and that he didn't give a crap about their daughter either. For all this time, he just lied so blatantly in such a way that would hurt Louis so much. Once again, that's why I can't stand him. I think Armand is a despicable vampire, and that's saying a lot because they're pretty bad. But yeah, he's the worst. And then at the end, when Santiago picks up the dress, he kind of shakes it and all the ashes kind of fly into the air. It was just so like, oh, I'm cleaning up the garbage. It's like, this was a dress that a vampire, a being, one of your fellow beings was wearing 2 seconds ago, and she's just dust now because you guys killed her by using the sun. It was so gross. The disdain they had for this, like, she was a bit of a rule breaker. She was a bit annoying sometimes, but to take somebody who is already so vulnerable and to treat her badly and then kill her in this way, absolutely disgusting. And again, Armand was running this entire thing. He's running this entire show. He knew exactly what he was doing. Disgusting. So those are my thoughts on episode 7, a very intense episode. I would love to know your thoughts, so please leave them in the comments section, and I'll be back shortly with a review of the finale of season 2, okay? See you guys later. Bye.